Good afternoon. Thank you for coming here. I think everything is in full swing, and I hope the time you're sitting here will be worth it. And then, so hopefully it's going to be interesting for you. The initial idea of this decolonizing virtual production actually coming from my reflection on the creativity. We hear a lot about people talking about virtual production, say they emancipate our filmmakers' creativity. We can work things more creative. We can do this, we can do that. And I will just keep thinking, this rhetoric, how exactly does that mean? And then when we praise these methods, this technology, a bunch, umbrella term basically, talking about so many stuff, what exactly the creativity they are referring to? So despite the VP virtual production tools offering exciting opportunities, particularly in the global north, where we are now, it is pivotal to ask whether these developments could maybe replicate the exclusionary practices. My focus is on introducing a decolonizing perspective while VP is still in its infancy, to investigate the way we research and deploy these technologies, especially in areas like cinematography and color design. This is our roadmap for the next 40 minutes. We will start by setting up what VP is. Of course, that will be short. I believe you already know what it is. And then we explore the notion of decolonization in my research. Decolonization is a huge term as well. And I probably will cite some of them that's relevant to my research and my angle. And we will dive into specific color challenges in the virtual production. Finally, I hope the research will give you some idea thinking about a potential solution using personal color analysis. I know, sounds like a witchcraft, but it's actually quite interesting later on when you have a little bit experience about the personal color analysis. So decolonizing virtual production is a provocation, I assume, and I also admit when I give the title of this chapter. Can we really do that? If we can, how? Virtual production technologies are accelerating rapidly in certain regions in the globe, US, UK, Europe, for instance, with substantial funding. Taking the UK as an example, an indication can be observed from recent UKRI-funded projects such as CoStar, with a total budget of £75.6 million, and XR Artist with £6 million, both focusing on VP as one of their research tools. Interweaving UK higher education institutions, corporate worlds, and art communities. Thanks to this type of collaboration, acceleration in the research and development of virtual production can hopefully propel diverse research visions to come to fruition. The question is whether these developments and the research agendas genuinely include perspectives from the global majority. Alarmingly, a VP research report has shown that the virtual production network remains as exclusionary as the traditional way of making film and television. In the early days of virtual reality, why we talk about virtual reality now, because I wanted to draw the comparison and maybe the similarity here for you. And not only I wanted to do so, other people has already mentioned, like the scholar Nakamura. Nakamura raised concerns that expensive technology with limited usage often meant developers and the target audience were mostly white men, risking the marginalization of non-whites and non-male groups. While virtual reality is not the same as virtual production, totally different two things, the caution remains relevant. Advanced media technologies can easily replicate discriminations. Take the virtual reality as an example again. Empathy, so often lauded as a central benefit of immersive experience in the virtual reality, can disguise the need to decolonize the medium. This is not to say that virtual production must solve the representation deficit by default, but rather that its creation, the virtual production creation, is shaped by players mostly based in the global north, which is a cause for reflection. One permanent feature of virtual production is real-time in-camera VFX, IC-VFX, allowing operations like a full live composition and motion captures. Yet, these capabilities hinge on the powerful computing infrastructure. Bond and all reminds us that coloniality can be seen in the often tacit patterns of power embedded in technology and social fabric. This inheritance from the colonial past can perpetuate inequality in what appears to be objective domains. If knowledge production and high-end training happen primarily in wealthier nations, others risk marginalization. Linking back to my reflection in the very beginning, I said about the creativities. Whose creativities? Are we really including the people from the global south or global majority? Their creativity can be discussed, can become part of the knowledge productions. I argue that the potential of fully leveraging the strength of the virtual production should be studied, particularly from cinematographers' perspective, who are the bridge between the technologies and the arts aesthetics. One route to somewhere more inclusive, the technologies, is considering how and for whom we design. Cruz proposed that building and fostering other sociotechnical imaginary to counter a Western-focused tech paradigm. A crucial part of this stance is to include the role of users who are often excluded from initial design phases. Cruz's view stresses reciprocal benefits and ensuring all users can comprehend and act. A robust decolonizing approach actively involves local know-how in a two-way conversation with technology providers. This dialogue of knowledges fosters solutions embedded in real, diverse contexts. In the case of the virtual production, it could mean involving cinematographers, colorists, people who will use that, and the practitioners outside of the typical Western manufacturing cycles from the outset. In the human computing interface, of course, Garcia and al. Outlines a 5-pathway framework, understanding the why, reconsidering the how, changing the for whom, expanding the what, and reflecting on the what for. When applied to virtual production, this resonates with calls to examine the broader societal and power structures behind our technical design. A decolonial approach does not assume the relevant domain is obviously colonial. It's totally not like that. We are not accusing anything is colonial or anything has a colonial legacy, but calls for conscious, considerate, and thoughtful and inclusive investigation. By adopting these pathways, we might see how established practices in camera trackings, lighting technologies, etc., etc. Another scholar, Sithot, concepts of the Euro-North American episteme, highlights that knowledge production can centralize certain worldviews, reinforce existing power hierarchies. When training and research revolve around big studios or universities in wealthier nations, those lacking such as funding could be sidelined. This situation demands alternative methods of engagement to avoid perpetuating the same structural inequality in new forms of media and technology. So, thinking about this, why we're wanting to take the cinematographer as one starting point to understand the issue of the decolonization. So what I noticed, while large manufacturers and the VP solution providers frequently discuss their specs, their features, cinematographers can bring practical knowledge about how these setups work on set, especially around color rendering, their judgments, their thinking, their perspective. They deal with immediate lighting decisions, real-time adjustments, and the interplay between virtual backgrounds and the physical world. To decolonize the medium, this virtual production medium, we need to acknowledge how decisions about camera lenses, lighting systems, and color calibrations often stem from the Western-led research and development project that might overlook nuanced local challenges, particularly around capturing a broad range of skin tones. By foregrounding cinematographers' experience, we can reveal assumptions shaping current virtual production workflow. If these professions come mainly from the West, the solutions might ignore regional issues or aesthetics from other parts of the globe. Hence, a decolonizing approach suggests collaborating with diverse cinematographers. In an LED volume, color shifts occurs because the light output can be low fidelity, missing certain wavelengths. While our eyes may adapt and compensate, the camera often picks up the skew colored. Davey and Whitehead discuss how the minimal spectrum in LED lights can distort hues, especially for skin tones, which is vital for cinematographers, and that's what we're trying to do. We want to keep that as good as possible. Though we can partially fix these issues in post-production, the base reference might still prioritize certain skin tones over others, reflecting long-standing biases. This forms core questions of inclusivity in virtual production or in general in cinematography. Is our collaboration or our calibration references and the default technical assumptions shaped primarily around whiteness? What can we do differently? Researchers attempt to develop color memory approaches for post-production, referencing a small set of emoji skin tones. While this is a step forward, the range remains limited. Scholars note that these emoji tones still hinge on the white norm, failing to represent the vast diversity of global complexions. And the color memory is also another very interesting thing I encourage you to study if you find it useful. So they do the psychological test, and if the participants knew by reading of the documents, this person have a higher education degree, have a higher income, they will remember that person's skin tone is lighter. That's just the color memory. It tricks us with a lot of things that we think might be, neutral, but maybe not. This underscores the persistence of bias. Solution may look inclusive at first, but continue to anchor whiteness at baseline. Even well-intended inclusivity measures can end up reinforcing a hierarchy of tones rather than truly accommodating global diversity. For decolonizing efforts, we must expand or rethink reference points. The key to me is the involvement of a cinematographer who broaden their understanding of color and the interplay between cultural sensitivity and local practices, and maybe that is less rely on the high tech only. The magic of cinematography in filmmaking hasn't been always favor of advanced technologies. We do things in a simple way. We try to make things work. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to always rely on the expensive products out there. Another reflection is about the critical thinking on natural as a guidance in screen aesthetics. Manufacturers often advertise new LED design as enabling darker skin tones to look more natural. But when we say natural, we must ask what standard of naturalness is being applied. In photography, Richard Dyatt, one of my favorite UK scholars, argues that aesthetics technologies historically centered white people, reinforcing the particular notion of light and skin representation as normal. Consequently, what is described as natural may not be neutral. It can reflect and reproduce Eurocentric ideals. Cinematographers and other practitioners must remain alert to these loaded industry terms, which can disguise underlying biases. Now, let's look into one of the compromises that most DPs and the colorists have made when filming in the LED volume. A practical trend emerging in virtual production is the use of dimmer, darker, muted, slightly non-vivid, or strong color, or darker color palette to avoid color mismatch, skin color, or something people will feel is unnatural. You probably can take an example. It's in 1899. Have you seen that Netflix series? Everything is so dark, And then the color, basically the palette they choose is just really muted, like a brownish, that kind of things. Right, because bright or highly saturated colors can reveal the contrast between physical and the digital elements. Many productions opt for moody lighting or a subdued backdrop just because they think that can disguise the problem from the technologies. While this approach can help everything blended smoothly, it carries creative and cultural implications. Imagine a storyline requires vibrant costumes, colorful cultural motifs, or a luminous sky highlights in well-lit scenes. If the default is to darken and mutant color palette to minimize technical challenges, we potentially lose a vast array of stylistic choices. This default aesthetics might especially impact stories rooted in cultures that embrace bright colored palettes, limiting representation once again. I wonder if virtual production with Unreal Engine can change the virtual world swiftly and effectively before we build a real set or put everything into production. Can we utilize this agile characteristic while looking at inherent color issues due to the physical, technological design, and performance? Here comes my experiment with the personal color analysis. What I want to do is integrating a very low-tech, or maybe you can't even say it's a science, personal color analysis in a high-tech process. Personal color analysis is an interesting tool that originated in the United States, but took off in places like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, where I come from. The basic premises is to match an individual's complexion, like including your skin tone, hair color, iris colors, to specific color palette, often characterized by seasons like spring, summer, autumn, and winter. During the personal color analysis session, an analyst and the individual, the subject, collaboratively decide which fabrics or color can enhance that person's skin tone appearance. And then the term they use is healthy and pleasing. Of course, healthy and pleasing are subjective and potentially problematic. In this research, I propose that pleasing is understood as the subject looks their age, so he or she is confident enough to wear less or no makeup. That is often used for covering blemishes. A definition is also proposed by the personal color analyst I work together for this research. This approach differs from imposing a standardized scale of skin tone. I don't know, have you seen the Fitzpatrick? Or recently we have a new skin tone scale. It's developed by a Harvard sociologist called Monk. Basically, they give you a wider range of skin tone to measure. But again, personal color analysis doesn't really buy that. They don't put into a category first. They just put you in front of lots of fabrics and try to figure out what exactly your skin tone, only you, can work better for certain color. So, because it seeks the subject's own input and perception, over time, personal color analysis practitioners in the East Asia, they also adopt this original Western systems and then bring in their own ideas, what exactly they can measure, different type of the preference, and then everything will become localized. This is where I would say something come out, why I think personal color analysis has this potential to become decolonial. On the surface, PCA, I'm just going to call that personal color analysis. PCA might seem another fashion or beauty trend only, but it's worth a closer look. Typical academic or industry approaches to skin tone rely on that standardized scales that could risk labeling or pigeonholing complexions in ways that might not fit local context. PCA, however, depends heavily on the dialogue between the analyst and the participant, meaning that the subject has a say in whether a color truly enhances their sense of well-being or their self-expression. This collaborative dynamic can serve a colonial function by pushing back against top-down Western-centric definition of what looks good. I argue that the endeavors of the analyst based in different regions to integrate local aesthetics represent the colonial negotiation between Western color principles and individual cultures' sensitivities. For the practitioners of decolonial feminism, Dalia Maria Benefield, decolonial practice are not limited to working against US-Europe imperialism materialized through the cultural powers. On the contrary, she thinks the colonial practice take place in multiple directions as passages and processes. When the potential of the destabilizing the orders of the modern colonial capitalist world system is possible. So there's another good literature I will show you guys in the later how we're going to separate coloniality, modernity, and the capitalism. Right, so VP technology raised without, I was just thinking the system in questions here are firstly represented by a white dominant virtual production technological race without sufficient first-hand experience from people of colors. And secondly, established skin tone research paradigms that might label skin colors by appearance. And cinematographers, they can maybe use this way to counterbalance this approach. My goal was to examine whether PCA-based color choices for the costume or the background color adjustment could influence our perception of the subject's skin complexion and enhance the integration of the virtual and physical world. I recruit 3 Asian models, a female Filipino, 21 years old, another female Filipino, 23 years old, and a male Taiwanese, which is me. You probably saw that picture when we saw that. The reason why is because I want to pay other models more. The research funding is really hard to apply, and then so I even say that I will hire 3 models, but I give all the money to those 2 models. So I'm just doing everything at once. So to represent the different complexions, 3 of us has quite different, slightly different, especially me compared to other 2 female models. Each one of us receive a PCA consultation to determine recommended and the least recommended colors. The personal color analysis not only gives you the good color they think your skin tone looks nice, it also suggests you to avoid certain things. Again, all this kind of conversation is all based on it's the communication based on that session. It's not something that is set in stone forever, because they keep saying through age, your skin tone will change. And that's not going to say that you always have this color this season. It's not like that. Right. So I wanted to use this information and then group that into a virtual production volume. By shooting in the university LED wall studio, I could systematically vary brightness, the light I wanted to control, the exposure I wanted to control, and of course, I can really use the information from the personal color analysis is warm or cool undertone from the light or from the clothes. So that will be applied to the virtual production background, the LED wall. Then gather the feedback from the industry practitioners on which images appeared more pleasing and healthy. The studio was equipped with the 5.5 meter and 3 meter LED walls, featuring a Brompton SX40 processor and the Moses Star Tracker for camera tracking. The camera is a Red Epic. I prepared 2 main virtual lighting conditions. One is overcast, one is sunny. Why these 2? Because earlier we already talked about virtual production. They suggest you to avoid the sunny situation, and I wanted to test whether sunny lighting can work if I apply for the personal color analysis color. So by leveraging the Unreal Engine's Ultra Dynamic Sky, it's a plug-in. It's a very useful thing. So you can change the lighting settings straight away without doing a lot of tweaking. Of course, you still need to measure a little bit, make sure that it's not overexposed or go to the direction it's not totally not what you want. Additionally, I will manipulate undertones, warm versus cool, within each condition. This setup allows me to see whether recommended colors for clothing or background adjustment could help subjects appear more integrated with the background. At the same time, their skin tone might have a different influence. So this is just a really quick examples for the personal color analysis. I don't know from your angle whether you can see, but these 4 faces or 12 faces, basically they are the same faces. But when you have different colors underneath the colors, that's how they match the personal color analysis. And then you immediately feel that their face look different. And then the language they use also is warm and cool. That doesn't mean that blue color is cool color. It means in the blue they have warm and they have cold. So you can see that my examples, blue colors has warm blue and cool blue. Green has warm green, cool green. And then also purple has the warm purple and the cool purple. So that's the thing, that don't think that our terms of describing color is something intuitive. In their systems, they have its own methodologies and the terminologies. Visually, even it's the same face, but the closeness to a costume color might influence how we perceive the skin tone, like I just say. Each went through this formal PCA session with the certified analyst. Surprisingly, model who appears visually similar end up with distinctly different seasons. For instance, the Model 1 and Model 2, Model 1 is categorized as a warm spring, while Model 2 is cool summer. And then my skin tone also quite different, Model 3, also quite different from Model 1, but we are categorized as similar seasons. And we use these models recommended best color and least recommended colors for their clothes during the shoot, and aiming to see whether these color choices would indeed shift how we feel about the skin tone representation on camera, and particularly under real-time in-camera VFX conditions. So 3 main variables I test or I measure, and I ask people to respond. The first one is hues. So it's very simple. I test whether the colors recommended by the PCA will affect the subject's skin tone representation. Second, I compare normal exposure. That means I align the lighting with the background lighting situation. So if the background is sunny day, I will light the subject sunny day. So it's more about that's about the exposure part. But I do create multiple tasks, trying to see if it's half stop under, 1 stop under, and see if the personal color analysis, the color can compensate that half stop. Right, the third one is I manipulate warm and cool color shift in the LED lamp. So I twist a little bit, make the original scene warm tone-ish or cool tone-ish. I will show you just now. So in the center is the original picture, original virtual world I create with Unreal Engine. On the top is I twist it a little bit to lean towards a warm color tone. And then the third one is I twist it into the cool color tone. And then of course, all the 3 models standing in front of the virtual production world, and I record exactly the same thing, just trying to measure how people will respond to that. This is a comparison, and then I argue only virtual production can allow for this type of gentle touch with small to 0 cost. Warm and cold tonality, this evaluation also align with cinematographer's language when we design lighting, whether we want it to lean towards a warm color-ish or we want it to go to the daylight color-ish. So I think there's a lot of the comparison and there are lots of the overlapping things we can really think about colors from a different perspective. So the harmonious relationship and the integration of the subject and the virtual background will be influenced by this extra consideration. This is the image I sent out. Again, sorry for the production and the real thing, probably slightly different. And so this is some image I screenshot from my survey. The top one is for the hue comparison. The middle one is for the exposure. Bottom one is for the background undertone twist. We have a range of the 10-second footage for different colors, color closed, and for 3 different models. And I screenshot then, I compile the screenshots, and screenshots were labeled and organized depending on the variables. I put them together to form a questionnaire. In total, 26 pairs of screenshots from the footage. And then there's also, you can see that there's free text sections, allow them to elaborate why they choose certain images. All participants who did the survey self-reported having normal color vision, and the very crucial thing is that they all have experience with working with virtual production technologies. And then they are invited to answer my questionnaire, and then they all come from my personal professional network. 11 Taiwanese filmmakers, the mean age is 39.4, and 7 females, 4 males. 10 British and European filmmakers based in the UK, the mean age is 37.1, 3 females, 7 males. Give informed consent, and then they complete the questionnaire. I choose Taiwan because its film industry is determined to develop virtual production practices as a springboard to international productions, though Taiwan is still not considering or recognized as a knowledge producer in virtual production workflow. Together, 21 participants that includes producers, directors, cinematographers, colorists, gaffer, editors, and virtual production specialists completed the questionnaire. The response, both in multi-choices and free text, allow me to compare their impression between the 2 regions. The comparative angles is significant. However, I also wanted to say this is not a psychological studies, so the sample pool is small, so I couldn't really give a very strong statistic analysis in the end. It's all judged by these people I choose, and then because they have experience with virtual productions. We start with the Taiwan participants. In sunny daylight situation, most Taiwanese participants say that the recommended clothing made facial skin look more pleasing, reflecting the concept of the healthy and age-appropriate appearance that the PCA consultation aimed for. However, under overcast conditions, 82% actually prefer image where the models were black at proper exposure level, rather than half stop under. When it came to adjusting the background undertones, around 2/3 believe that shifting the virtual background to match the subject's warm or cool category can give a better sense of the visual harmony. Notably, some participants commented that black clothing at proper exposure brightened the face or made it pop, suggesting that local aesthetic standards or color preference may differ from my original assumptions that a slightly underexposed would enhance depth. Among the UK respondents, 58% say they found the recommended colors more pleasing in sunny condition, which is still a majority but noticeably less than the Taiwanese group. In overcast setup, 70% favors black clothing at proper exposure, aligning somewhat what we observe with the Taiwanese feedback. A strong 72% disliked the hard stop under exposure, citing that the face looked duller and less lively. Interestingly, around 2/3 also noted that adjusting the background to match the complemented subject's PCA undertone produced a more cohesive images. These results highlight that while PCA-based recommendation offers some advantages, cultural preferences for brightness and certain color contrast can override a purely technical approach to exposure. And if we look into the free text response that can give us more reason or the why, shows that the simple choices between 2 images couldn't tell the whole story. I identify few people, they are very into the virtual production, and they also have done something with the virtual production in their credit. So particularly when I studied their answers, I have a very interesting reflection about my approach as a cinematographer and what they feel as a participant. When I studied the reason behind their choice, I personally feel that half stop underexposed can preserve subtle skin layers and depth. I don't really want things overexposed. Just That could be my personal taste. Whereas most Taiwanese participants favor brighter look. Interestingly, two UK-based cinematographers agree my observation, and they explain that in their free text section. What they feel is because when it's lighter, we can see the blood of the skin, and that doesn't really make everyone look the same. But again, something that if we go back to the Taiwanese response, this total clash is a very interesting observation that might reflect the broader cultural aesthetics preferences, some tied to the colorism, where lighter tone skin is preferred, or to an ingrained expectation of beauty skin brightness means. In the UK samples, there was a similar tendency toward proper exposed image, but reasons cited in free text varied, indicating personal or professional norms rather than a straightforward preference for lighter skin. Model 1 recommended colors, for instance, pink and green for the Model 1, was generally favored by Taiwanese and UK participants. Similar situation can be observed in Model 2 with the purple color costumes. However, for the Model 3, myself, a male, and then I was assigned to the yellow and brown. The feedback was very mixed. Some felt black actually works nice for male face because that just make my face has more shapes, the model it better, looks more contrasty. And then the brown actually blends into my skin, making myself look slightly unwell. This raised questions about whether PCA usage differs by gender or personal style. Even when PCA theoretically assign a palette, external perceptions still vary. A reminder that color choices in cinematography requires iterative testing and conversation with all creative collaborators. When I adjust the warm or cool undertone for each model's background environment, approximately 2/3 of the participants saw a more cohesive match between subject and background. This suggests a design strategy for VP, maybe. We do not necessarily need to keep set dim or desaturated to hide color shift or the issue from that separations. Instead, bringing the background hue to each subject's undertones may open the door for bright, high-contrast visuals without risking any artificial look. However, these undertone tweaks were subtler in the overcast scenario, leading participants to focus more on exposure or costume rather than the background themselves. So from the decolonial perspective, it empowers local cinematographers, maybe, to tailor their environment, suggest an environment with the virtual production brain bar, and then trying to figure out the way or test the colors for the diverse skin tone, rather than insisting on the single generic LED LUT, the lookout table, or a lighting scheme. Finally, the decolonial reflections. This study implies that we don't have to adopt dark mutated palette to disguise LED color skew. If we use PCA, personal color analysis driven information, to coordinate clothing hues and the background undertones, we can sustain more vibrant looks. Both costumes and the background accounts for individual undertones. This aligns with Kerr's, I think I mentioned that about the decolonial technical design, Kerr's notion of engaging local knowledge and the user input, as well as Garcia's and O, that emphasize on rethinking the for whom and why aspect of technology, rather than defaulting to a single standard to hide potential mismatch. We can integrate flexible design parameters grounded in user experience and the critical reflection on the aesthetics assumptions that shape color calibration in virtual production. I hope that this layer of consideration could foster a shift from defaulting to a white-centric calibration model. At its core, applying a user or subject-led approach can be viewed as a decolonial act. It challenges the standard references and accommodates varied aesthetic sensibilities. My study, though, remains limited by the small numbers of participants, all of whom already have some familiarity with VP or work with VP. but I hope in the future, this pool will getting bigger and bigger when the VP become more accessible. Color is inherently subjective. I need to also say this again, shaped by personal and cultural experiences and entangled with politics like colorism. Future research could expand the participants pool across multiple ethnicities, geographies, and skin tone range, and incorporate advanced colorimetry. Additionally, deeper dialogues with LED manufacturers may help us systematically incorporate more inclusive reference standards. Such expansion would strengthen the argument that we can build truly diverse, user-focused VP infrastructures. So for cinematographer working in the virtual production setup, these lessons are actionable, at least from my point of view. First, simply considering personal color analysis finding can open up new lighting strategies, or even to enrich your own judgment when you wanted to decide the light or for the person's color skin, especially for subject with the skin tone that LED technology might otherwise distort. Second, adjusting the LED volumes undertone to match or complement the subject can significantly improve visual harmonies. But it does require additional planning and collaboration with VP technologies and the VP specialist. Finally, while it's tempting to keep everything dark and muted by hiding technical problems, that may stifle creative expression and perpetuate limited color norms. I hope that we can embrace a different type of the color strategies in the future. All right, so this just wanted to conclude. And I know from the hindsight, after this whole thing being written, being studied, the book chapter is in press. It's going to be published with book called Virtual Production Screen, What's Real. I think it's going to be published in April this year. I noticed the challenging of doing color research is very, very big. And I can also see a lot of the methodologies flaws has been there. But I hope this is not going to prevent anyone who wants to engage with the high-end technology as their research tool. After all, we might feel scared when we don't have that fundings, we don't have the resources. But my approach is just asking industry and let them to understand that their research maybe is too pigeonholed for their agendas. Hopefully, you can persuade them to do something with you when you have a critical mindset, try to find out something different. And that's why I use the personal color analysis, trying to demonstrate maybe this decolonial approach can be applied, even when you're trying to work with a very high-tech, very Western central technology. And then the result I come out from that research also impress some of the people from the virtual production. Because at the last day of the shoot, we have two German specialists coming from Munich, just because they know the gaffer, and then they know that the gaffer is helping me to do this research. They pop in, and they actually see me, I wear the brown color tuxedo, and then when I wear a pink, dark purple sweater, jumper, and then when I wear gray hoodie, and they just really thinking that person looks different just by changing the clothes. So again, I'm not saying there's lots of the scientific things we can unpack or whatever, because my training hasn't been the psychologist, so I wouldn't be able to do that just yet. But I just wanted to open to everyone who are willing to do more research with color, with film, with very difficult cultural things behind it. Try it. And there's a lot of things can come out of that. And hopefully the whole conversation will encourage industry to have a different approach when they design their products. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Hold it. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much, Luke. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I found it really fascinating. It's funny, this is unnecessary information, but my uncle went to a personal colour analyst a few years ago, and every single Christmas he bangs on about how amazing it was and life-changing, and his entire wardrobe has been transformed as a result. Okay, and I never ever thought about how that could be applied in a cinematography context. I was like, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, I know about that. Yeah. Anyway, but the point you touched upon it right at the end there. I just wondered if you could kind of foresee what kind of tension there might be between this approach and this desire to kind of have more accurate or more authentic skin tones through PCA, and the kind of the creative intentions of the art director or the production designer or the director who wants a certain color for other reasons of meaning creation, and how you see those perhaps being kind of finding a kind of a mutual space.
Thank you. That's some very good questions. And to be honest, the answer to solve that tension probably wouldn't be too soon or too fast or too easy. Like, we probably already know this. The reason the Kodak started to change their film stock to capture details in shadow, darkness, is because, not because more black people using their product, it's because the white people, running the commercial company, they can't use their stock to film the dark wood furnitures or chocolate. So I don't think with this awareness that, you know, you as a cinematographer, you suggest something and then you can let other people to change their aesthetics. Because in the end, I have to say, we are serving the story, and that story is coming from the combination of the vision of the directors and then the wish of the studio. So I'm not saying that this kind of awareness or anything wanted to disrupt. I wanted to let the cinematographer actually have this broader perspective, and they can suggest something, and hopefully they won't jump into the pigeonhole that I was trying to say, this is the best way to do it. It's actually, hopefully, the cinematographer and all the filmmakers, with this kind of the consideration, they will look at their product, their stories with a slightly, you know, multiple perspectives, and hopefully in 10 years or 20 years, when the AI can really do something for us quickly, though, so that means the camera itself doesn't really restrict to that single aperture. Because right now, I think a lot of things, you set your aperture and the rest will have to, you know, trying to fix the rest. And hopefully that kind of technology actually let the technologies will become an accelerator to solve the tension between the, you know, two visions about what is beauty. But I guess there's no direct things or someone is the best way to do so. I just hope the research can become something to that people can make some informed decision, regardless what's that.
And I guess at the very least, it can just become an element of that creative dialogue where it's not currently.
Yeah. And also, like I said, virtual production, so easy to change those little tweaks. So that doesn't cost anything. Why you don't let other people say to just give it a try? Maybe that will solve the problem by chance. Who knows?
Yeah. Thank you very much. So this is I'm going to go get the wine ready now. So thank you.
We've heard a lot here about the sort of like this from a sort of production angle. I was wondering, to what extent does your research think about the exhibition of film? So, of course, you know, you're talking about how this filters into the pre-production, the production process, as well as some of the sort of after touches. But how about exhibition then? So, you know, viewing a film on a Samsung phone versus an iPhone, or in IMAX versus, screen projection, maybe TV standards as well, which of course have different color palettes, have different definitions. I was wondering if you could maybe speak to exhibition in dialogue with these production considerations.
This is a very good question, but I probably have to say I won't be able to answer that because the distribution part is so vast. I don't really think anyone has a control over. Even, you know, we can make the package it's suitable for all the projections.
Yeah.
But everybody, to be fair, has a different color perception. So sorry, I wouldn't be able to talk about that. But I do think when I talk about decolonization in cinematography with a German colleague somewhere, and she's very, supportive. She thinks, oh, that's great. But she just comes back to me saying, but if audience doesn't buy it, what's the point doing this? Because if audience still prefer a certain way to be shot, what's the point to decolonize it? And is there anything that you really can decolonize per se if the whole market supporting only one type of aesthetics because they only want to see that with that kind of distribution method? So, but I say, well, again, if we have to find everything for a reason, then find a reason to do so, probably we won't do anything at all. So what I'm trying to tell her is that, I don't really worry about whether I can change the global audience preference for viewing certain things. But I hope at some point they will start to pick up the differences, the nuances, and then try to think the beauty we assume actually has a lot of things to unpack. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
My question has to do about colour forecasting and the fashion industry. And as I understand it, the whole reason behind a lot of that colour forecasting is about change in the market and commerce. So, a colour or something will be called something slightly different between seasons, just in order to create a kind of a market and a desire to have for people to buy this new product. And I wondered how that sort of whole commercial, the more perhaps that the element of colour forecasting that perhaps we know most about and has been around for longer, since about the 20s in the US, and all of those slums, those organisations that was their job, and they linked in the Hollywood and all the rest of it. Is there a bit like following on from Jimmy, a sort of a conflict between what the industry of colour forecasting's primary aim is to show the colours of the clothes and not to light or make people's skin appear to be like better, more pleasing for whatever viewer? I don't know, how does that square with your thinking and analysis about where this might be going?
It's a very good question. I think I read an article is talking about how to use personal color analysis with the trend you were saying, the color forecasting. Unfortunately, I didn't read that properly, so I couldn't really give you the direct answer. What's the angle? But I remember what they suggest is personal color analysis. This approach still can't answer the forecasting because the reason is they don't predict future. They only look at that specific moment, how your skin tone appears or suitable for certain things. So that's why they do want, for instance, the personal color analysis. Some people develop an app for it and trying to figure out how to integrate into the aesthetics surgery industry. But they probably somehow right now, the color forecasting still don't see the potential, commercial potential. But if you wouldn't mind, I can send you that A4 here. So I'm really sorry, I didn't read that properly because I think I'm not doing fashion. So I didn't.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because you can see that, with filmmaking having to latch onto commercial trends in other spheres and connect with fashion and very much about that. That's quite a dominant discourse to dispraise all of the other ideological factors notwithstanding. And so just the kind of scope and potential for personal, I can see that it could be limited because of the power of this enormous forecasting industry that is sort of based about other kind of linkages in with commercial
and also
developments, global developments in fashion.
This one, personal color analysis, also used for the makeup as well. But because I don't have that capacity to whether discuss makeup or hire a makeup artist in my research, so I skipped that whole thing totally. But the makeup things, like you say, the fashion, yes, it's a lot of the implication and the collaboration can be done. So I hope, again, by reading the article so far about personal color analysis, people still think it's not science. There's no way we can talk about it in the academic term. I also feel maybe some of that is true because it's just so big things when you're trying to research color. But I believe more and more people, when they see that the possibility or the usefulness, when they apply to something, hopefully they will become something more empirical, and hopefully something other better researchers can pick it up from somewhere else, not like me trying to mash everything together. But I still think I come out with something could be useful if the cinematographers or industry people would love to try without causing any extra cost, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. That was a great paper, and one that is really interesting to me as someone who does a lot of writing around Asian film and TV. So thank you so much for that. I was really interested in thinking through what you're talking about with personal color analysis versus maybe what goes on in terms of cultural color inclusions in film and TV. So watching a lot of, for example, contemporary Japanese cinema, there are very specific color palettes that tend to get used because culturally there are particular color palettes that people tend to wear. And I'm just wondering if there are, big differences you were privy to or you were seeing between Taiwanese cultural approaches to color and other Asian approaches to color. Just in terms of, lighting in general terms, like, is there a generic approach where you're seeing genre having a big impact, or whether there's particular kinds of televisual influence here? I just wondered if because there's such a lot of scope here to think through those kinds of issues. I wondered if you had just any more to say about it, really.
Yes, thank you for asking these questions. I did a little bit digging thing. So it's not a systematic answer yet, but there's one interesting Taiwanese feature film. They specifically hire Indian colorists to grade their film. First time the result come back, the Taiwanese director was shocked, thinking, why you make my lead actors look so yellow? But of course, the whole thing depends on what's the color memory of the colorist in India, or what's their standard of beauty for the lead actors. So the director approached him, the colorist say that, oh, can you explain why you do this? They just say that, but it looks great. She looks so great with that kind of warm tone and that kind of and enhance the orange, the red undertone. So I couldn't really give you a systematic answer, but yes, culturally, a lot of the way we approach color and then link the color with beauty or what it should be, what it should mean, different. And then my personal observation is when I watch the Thai TV series or their film, they are not afraid of using magenta. They are not afraid of using green, which these two color is something we try to avoid in the Western feature films color grading because they make people look sick. But a lot of the you can really see that the magenta color on their skin tone, it's just there. You can't even say that, oh, it's just maybe it's my TV screen is not color graded correct. It's just there. Yeah. So in Taiwan, I can also observe that kind of angelic pink also can be noticed for the lead actress. And then the general tone go to lean towards greenish too. My suspicion or my thinking is maybe that relates to the back in the old day, the film stock they use has been established certain type of the preference for what is the film look. And that has been applied again and again throughout the throughout the people the practitioners, they feel this is the right way to color grade, or this is the right way to process it. Again, no answer yet, but that's my I hope I will get this because I'm applying for a PhD. So this is the thing I wanted to look into, the specific Taiwanese cinema context, how we represent Aboriginal people, Japanese people, and then right now there's many people coming from Indonesia, Malaysia, because we call them new immigrants because they came here for work or because of marriage. And the representation of others is so fascinating to look at, whether it's from the post-colonialism point of view or from decolonialism point of view. And then that representation, the tension between how we wanted to put them together, make people think this is how you should look at, is fascinating. So sorry, I don't have the systematic answer to say which country may prefer this, but again, when you come into the country, there's regional differences. And then the different times, different studios maybe prefer certain type of their product to be seen as their signatures. So a lot of the discussion can be told. And then, but in the end, one of my US cinematographer told me that, look, what's the point to do this? We do film for entertainment. We don't do film for thinking. I say, all right, fine.
Oh, but they do films to make people look good. So
yeah,
it really does matter. You're absolutely right. And now you've made me think about all the green tie horror movies that I've seen. So thank you again for that.
Thank you.
Question I have is around digital makeup, because one thing that we're seeing is, there's a company who I've been in touch with called Vmatics. So they are putting AI and digitally generated makeup on in post-production. And I'm just wondering whether, because that then affects the tone of the person rather than adjusting the environment to their skin tone, you're taking the makeup to adjust the tone to match the background. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that kind of future where you might be combining virtual backgrounds, but then also using virtual makeup, which is a sort of different process, one of which takes the skin tone as the base of the image, and the other one which takes the surroundings as the base of the image and adapts the skin tone to. One of the things that VMAX do is usually with digital and post-production makeup. So there's no physical makeup. It's all done digitally afterwards. But one of the things they'll do is they'll take the skin tone analysis and then they will use digital tools to map the makeup onto the face after. So you could shoot somebody clean without makeup and then you could decide what makeup you want on them afterwards. It's an interesting question because what you're then doing is affecting their skin tone in post-production and changing their skin tone to be more aesthetically pleasing rather than matching the environment to their skin tone to make their skin tone the base of the.
Okay, so I would say if the only thing, I can suggest for this technology is please, the key designer or main designer, try to understand decolonization a little bit more because you never know, maybe that person or the whole team designed their product thinking, yes, by clicking this, the algorithm, just like the lots, right? They can change something immediately. But that change, do they really have a very robust pool for the darker skin tone or Native America or some people from South Africa? I mean, all these kind of things all come back to that very first question we asked: who the design is for, and what kind of outcome you expect to to help or enrich the user experience. So if that is going to happen, I think it will be lovely because it's so easy to change how they look by the digital makeup. But that algorithm, how that's been developed, I think that one needs to be looked into further, and hopefully the technical, the brain people behind it, they will have a space for consider the decolonial approach. That's probably the only suggestion I can say. Because when we do some new product development, we so intended to choose the literature, but that literature, what kind of sample is based to form that literature is a question we definitely need to look into.
Just a final comment, but I think some black filmmakers did experiment and have experimented with film stock, some things from like Bamako and Fala, and by doing, what you were suggesting, but with film stock. Quite a while ago, they did have this project to bring out the whole palette with the skin and how beautiful it looks in light films like that. So it's a project was great roots, and and therefore this digital arena is kind of on really being part of that.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning this. Also, right now, even the LUTs, there's one very good cinematographer from the United States. She designed 4 different types of LUTs for darker skin tone. And I just really wanted to dive into that kind of route, because when you're thinking about lighting nowadays, you have to think about LUTs, because color grading is part of lighting now. It just can't separate them, because what you do is going to dictate what you can create in the future. But my question is, okay, she definitely creates something very useful. At least it's a study for 4 options LUTs. But how you're going to differentiate further or make it more nuanced? That's the things will depend on the future generation, or how we're going to interact with this technology and make people think there's a market, there's a reason, and there's a strong motive behind to do this. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yes.